So we are a general contractor. In our company, my title is vice president, which basically I oversee pretty much general operations of the whole company. But my primary day-to-day and my background is working as a project manager.
Mm-hmm.
So as a project manager, I oversee probably 3 projects at a time, where we have superintendents in the field running the day-to-day operations of those projects, and I am their office support. So I'm writing contracts, I'm placing orders, I am running the owner, architect, contractor meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I am issuing requests for information, change orders, etc. Basically, the paperwork process to keep a job going.
Yeah, so the general team makeup is there's a client, there's an architect. This is typical. It varies, obviously, but client, architect, contractor, engineer, those are the kind of the 4 big players on an average
Correct.
project.
Yeah, so I would say traditionally is, client at the top. They have the one that has assembled the team ultimately. All of your design professionals, your architect, your interior designer, your engineers, civil, structural, soils, etc., and then your contractor and then subcontractors below that.
Gotcha.
There are some sub-designers. Lighting is usually a different designer. Sometimes AV can be its own designer, landscape architects, etc. So, and sometimes the clients have a representation firm,
Mm-hmm.
an owner's rep. So that's generally each team on a project.
Right.
For what we do, because we primarily build high-end custom residential homes.
Gotcha.
Usually from the ground up, some full major remodels. It depends. We do some commercial work as well where the team is slightly different, but that's a pretty good standard structure for a project in the team.
Right. So speaking of the team, so you would have a project manager, right, which is more in the office, a super that's on the site running the day-to-day, keeping track of everything, and then you have, I guess you have a crew that's in-house, like framing crew that's in-house, and the rest is subcontracted out?
Correct. So our company, we have self-performed framing, finish, carpentry, and concrete.
Okay.
We used to be as big as 60 employees, so we self-perform much more back then. We are no longer that large. We are now 25 people, and we still have carpenters and we still have concrete crew in-house. What we self-perform is based on the size of the project, the timing of it, the scope. So we have subcontractors for all of those miscellaneous areas as well. You also sometimes in the field have foremen, which is right below a superintendent. So depending on the size of a job, you have a super that's overseeing all of it. The foreman's more, on the ground, or you're splitting up some of the, we'll have a super that oversees the house because that's the main schedule driver and finish. And the foreman's overseeing all of the site work because we're dealing with a large site. So that would be the basic, per project team. We also have in-house estimator who is always sort of reachable and provides input throughout the process and the project based on how they bid it, what information they had originally, which is what has changed now. Also support to providing cost estimates for what sort of change orders or impacts of what an RFI might have. So our estimator is always involved in all the projects throughout.
Are there advantages or disadvantages for you or the client or anyone else to have more of the crew in-house as opposed to not? Like you said, you used to be 60, now you're 25, or is it kind of the same thing?
So for us, it's very advantageous because it provides an extra layer of personnel to pick up loose ends. So what you find on these big projects is you bid it out and you try and capture everything, but there's always a small amount that's, not foreseen, or one person's scope ends at one place and another person's scope doesn't pick up at that exact same spot. And there's this hole in the middle. Well, we can really jump in and fill that hole rather than, going after subcontractors to pick it up or hiring a third person to fill in that middle. So that's a great aspect for us. The concrete, we did because we had a lot of concrete people, and we're very good at technically difficult concrete. So we've done some really amazing, board form where finish is really important, some really structurally unique. We're just a little bit more cost effective in those. If it's pretty simple and straightforward, we'll sub it out all day because we're not going to beat their prices. But we can figure out some really complicated stuff. So it's a really nice option for us to have that because it can make us more competitive on certain projects where bidding it out, we're just not getting real, accurate numbers as far as we're concerned.
Yeah.
The carpentry we did because that's where we came from. My father used to build boats.
Wow.
He did finish carpentry. Our estimator used to be a stair builder. So that is a big...
Those are all complicated things. Building boats and stairs are like really complicated.
Exactly. So that's sort of like just our background.
Yeah.
And that's a quality control thing. Their level of expectation of finish and how things should be done are, very high. And that's a signature of a finish for us. So that's why we've continued to do that. Plus, finished carpentry covers a lot of areas. Sometimes, you have cabinets that are ordered, but setting all of them is not included. Well, we could set the cabinets or installing door hardware. Lots of little miscellaneous items, bath accessories. There's all these small pieces that you can buy out or you can have made, but actually getting it installed isn't always easy to contract and get done. So that's the advantage there. We used to frame because, again, framing and the type of homes we build, especially if you're framing a modern home, being true and plumb is the end all be all. You can't pick any framer to just come in and throw it in, because then your sheetrock's off, your reveals are off, everything. So framing was again a quality control aspect for us. But what happened was because we were mostly like a finished carpenter framer, we were not that cost effective.
But it was damn good quality.
But it was very good. Yes. Sheetrockers loved us. But we ended up really investing time and finding quality framers that we felt framed to our expectation. And so when we did that, we were able to get out of the framing game. And so that's been really beneficial for us. The other thing too with self-performing is you can better control schedule.
Yeah.
Right.
Not waiting, especially in the industry right now that's so impacted. It's very hard to make schedules and with subs being busy and lead times and everything. So sometimes being able to self-perform gives us control of that schedule. And so there are benefits, but like I said, we don't do it on everything because sometimes it doesn't make sense. It's not beneficial. It depends on the project.
Is it common for most contractors within the residential space, let's say, to have roughly the same amount of like in-house staff, like for framing to be, framing or finished carpentry or whatever else to be in-house, or is it just really vary?
So it's a mix. I would say half the contractors we compete against do have a staff, and common staff for them to have are framing and carpentry. I would say that's very common. Concrete, I would say not as much.
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit more rare. The other half of contractors we compete with have no people in the field, and they are heavier staffed with management and superintendents and so forth.
Yeah.
So I would say there's sort of two ways to do it. We're a small company. We can perform in the field. We have less layers of management and overhead. And that's where the field sort of helps us and supports us, so that we're not working as hard to get subs to do what we need, because we can fill those holes. The other model being they have no people in the field. So they have more staff because they are constantly really drilling down to get every aspect covered by subcontractors. So it just depends. It's sort of two different models.
Yeah, I understand that. That's very clear. And I could see where in either case it could work depending on how things are run, who's owning the company and whatever else. But I could also definitely see, certainly from your perspective, having some amount of crew in-house could be super advantageous because it's potentially a lot quicker, it's easier, and there's, construction is so complicated. And I think it's something that a lot of non-building professionals maybe a lot of times don't fully appreciate is the sheer complexity of a building. And there's always these minor things that are happening in construction that need to be picked up. So I could see if you have a few folks in a house that are savvy in a couple different areas, they can come in almost whenever and just clean it up and to get on to the next thing instead of having to call someone else, wait to hear back from their phone call and schedule them in and all that other stuff. And then a week or 2 weeks go by.
Yeah, definitely. I know we also have, a couple dump trailers, we have a driver. And then we have general labor, and sometimes we have to have labor just on a site 24/7 just to help keep it clean, just to make it workable for everybody. And sometimes our driver is just doing dump runs every day to keep job sites clean or picking up materials every day and delivering them to the different sites because otherwise you're waiting a week for delivery. Yeah. So for us, it works out really well. We will never go back to 60 employees, but that's primarily just based on, California employment law more than.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Once you get over 50 people, it becomes much more complicated. So yes, my plan is to always continue to have people and staff in the field and be able to maintain our quality and our schedule and are able to be a little bit more mobile and malleable for what each project requires. So I think that's a good fit for us. And when we started, we didn't have project managers. I mean, that was sort of unheard of back then. You had your supers and you had your estimator, but they ran everything from the field. And so that's been a big change for us. And I think the industry over the years is switching to things being more complicated and more communication amongst more people and needing that extra layer of management of just the communication aspect.
Yeah, I could see that. That was another question I had was my reading of the construction industry, and this comment applies to almost everything else now, is that things have become so much more complicated for a variety of reasons, and therefore a lot of tasks have become specialized. So you have a ton of specialists now for each of these different tasks, whereas I feel like before, I don't know, 40 years ago or something, you could have a lesser number of people doing a greater number of different tasks. But now it's like everyone really has their focus.
Definitely. Well, I just think that the industry and the regulation of the industry has become so much more complicated. I mean, the simple aspect of what Title 24 is anymore is so... that almost rules the whole project anymore, is can you make your Title 24? Are you meeting all the requirements? Can we build it to meet those requirements? So, and that changes, every few years. So the latest structural code revisions really changed and impacted how we were building things. And that just came into play within the last 5 years. And we're still adjusting to that new code and level of requirement. So yes, I think it's had to become more specialized because there's too much information and guidance and requirements on all the different aspects that no one can handle all of it.
Yeah.
So even for us as a GC, that's what becomes more and more complicated, is who our subcontractors are and ensuring that they are the professional and the specialist in their area, because we have to know a fair amount about everything. But we can't get down to that level of detail. And so we have to rely on them to really know their specific trade to be advising us on what what we can do, what we can't do, et cetera. So, yeah, there's definitely more players in the game. There are some advantages and disadvantages, I would say. It makes it a little bit more complicated to communicate. But the great thing is, like, it's like subcontracting. You have professionals in their area. You have team members that you can really rely on that know how to do it and what to do.
Right.
So there is that benefit. It's just the communication amongst them and the incorporation of all those aspects amongst all of them. So very rarely anymore is there a question that's just for an architect or just for structural. Everything impacts everybody anymore.
Yeah. That's why when people want to change stuff, we're like, hey, don't change that. That's going to take a week to figure out.
Yeah, they have to decide and you have to determine if it actually works with what you're trying to get done. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing how much more difficult it is to build anymore. Yeah. It's pretty cool when it comes together and you have a great team and it all works out. But that's our whole job, is we look at ourselves as conduits of information. So it's our job to relay what's happening in the field and put it in a way that's clear enough for the architects, engineers, the design team to understand what our issue is and to help and work as a team to find the best solution that benefits all aspects of the job. We meet our structural requirement. The architect still gets what they're looking for as far as appearance, and we can actually construct it in the field.
So if we could go toward the actual process of, hiring a contractor, working with a contractor, in what way a project typically starts for you guys? Is it the client that comes and reach out? Is it the architect?
So for us, it's about 50-50.
Okay.
We have a lot of repeat clients, and then we have a lot of word of mouth from past clients. So half the time it's coming direct from a client that's heard about us, knows someone that we worked with in the past, and they can reach out to us at various levels. Sometimes it's, I want to do this project. Who should I work with? What's the process? So then, we help them with what's the style, location, we refer them, and based off that, potential good fits as architects or interior designers and so forth. And the other half is, it's an architect, already has a client, maybe it's even already ready to go and get permitted, looking for a contractor, and then we get involved. So I would say it's 50-50 for us on both of those.
Is there an ideal for you as far as how the project starts and who reach out first?
So it's always great when you connect with the client, whether they're really involved or not. I will always advise that construction is tough. It's not a really easy, enjoyable process always.
Yeah.
We've seen everything in projects, from divorces to, it's not. What you realize is people have to make a lot of decisions together at very real time for real money impact.
Yeah.
And it's stressful. And so I always suggest to clients to pick, if us and another contractor are totally comparable, pick who you want to work with, because our projects are 2 or 3 years long.
Yeah.
So you're going to be working with us almost every day for 3 years. You want to enjoy who you're working with. You want to have some common interests, get along. So that's nice when it comes from the client, because then you can build that rapport right away. You can confirm that we're both a good fit. We both want to work together. Coming from an architect is just as fine, but the ideal is when it comes to us from an architect. Is it going in for permits tomorrow and they need someone and it's a competitive bid? That doesn't always set it up for the most successful, best project. It can work, and we've done it before, but you always like it when an architect realizes as well that they're part of this team for the long haul, and the contractor needs to be part of this team. And so We want to pick somebody early and work through it together. And so the earlier we get involved is always preferred, in my opinion. I think it keeps us all on the same page of what can and can't be done, what the cost impact of design decisions are.
Yeah.
And it really sets us up for success. We can better understand what the client's looking for, what the architect's after. Just the longer we're engaged, the better. If you get hired right before permit, then you're playing catch up on all these conversations and all these design decisions that have been made over this course of time that got you to where you're at. And pretty soon you're just thrown right in, having to deliver on something that's been a work in progress for a long time.
Yeah, that's great. There's a lot of stuff to unpack there. So the first thing is talking about the project team broad scope, right? I mentioned before, there's the client architect, engineer, and contractor, right? And usually it seems like the client confers with the architect, and then the architect acts as the kind of bridge between client and contractor. And this has several reasons for this. One of them is that it cleans up communication, as you can probably describe. Like, it's the worst thing when you have 6 different people all giving answers in different ways and talking over each other in a kind of a round table format, especially when, let's say there's 2 clients as a husband, wife, or partners, and they don't know anything about this industry, and then they're chiming in on solutions. It gets really chaotic. So that's a long way of saying, do you find that a lot of the architects you work with, or what you see in the profession, are with the clients from the very beginning to the end? Or do a lot of architects now just do CDs and then bounce and say, okay, here's the contractor, good luck?
So just to sort of backtrack and reiterate what you said.
Yeah.
I think the history of the industry was architect was the top dog.
Mm-hmm.
What clients went to first was pick the architect that they want, whether it was because of a certain design style or loving past work or, just really wanting to work with them. And then architects always built the entire team. That was always the way it was done forever and ever. With not only the design team, but also picking contractors for the client to pick, but from a pool of contractors that the architect liked and had worked with.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen a slight increase over the years of contractor being the first selection, and then doing the reverse, sort of, here are potential architects, here are potential designers. And again, the client's still picking the team, but with the contractor leading.
Mm-hmm.
But with architects leading the team, definitely with the design professionals, it makes, the most sense, because they're sort of managing that whole process. They're the ones collating everything for the final construction. And then with contractors, it's always nice because we know how that architect works, what to expect, what level. Not all architects are fully detailed architects.
Mm-hmm.
Some are design architects. You are going to get basically the bare minimum for permit, and then you're going to get a lot of additional renderings or models.
Right.
And it's up to you to work with them to figure out how to get where they want it to go. Some architects are extremely detail oriented. They're going to detail more than you ever needed, but it's important for them to express what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, through the process, we always want the architect involved all the way through. There are always going to be questions that are going to come up. And we are just there to realize the vision. It is not up to us to come up with the design or the vision. So that's why you need the architect, the designers, the team, because they know what it's supposed to look like or what the intent is. I can give you examples on how to get there. Mm-hmm. I can make suggestions on materials or products that might be the best fit for what they want. but it's not for us to say, well, we think this window should be like this. You know, that's not our job.
How about a triangle?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just not our place to ever provide that sort of opinion. But you get a mix. And what I see happening more, which is sort of a frustration and disappointment, is clients sort of asking, when can we stop paying architect fees? And it, you know, well, we have full permanent plans. What do you need them for anymore? Well, you never, you know, there are always unforeseen conditions. There are getting a set to permit and getting a set to construction are two different things as well.
Yeah.
What you need for permit is not what you need for construction. It gets you some ways there, but not all the way there. And there are detail and further integration of, you know, every window door system is different. How it gets installed, how it integrates, how it's waterproofed, how it's flash, and incorporating that with what materials you're using and what the reveals are. These are all things that you have to work through most times through the process. It's not put it on paper and it's done and, you know, slam dunk. So I would say for us, the goal is always to have the team intact. There's always a point, you know, when you get through structural, you don't have the structural involved anymore. And that's okay, that they served their purpose of the job. And towards the end, if you have an interior designer, they're doing more of the weighing in than the architect is. But all team members are critical to delivering it correctly. And there are some architects that are smaller and they can do CD drawings and be out, and that works fine, you know, and for smaller projects that it works great for them and it works great for us. But I would say with the bulk of what we do, having a team involved in throughout the process is the best. And we have done projects where one architect did the original set and then another architect worked through the construction. It's
Really?
worked. It's not ideal.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely, you miss some things in the transition.
I think
Yeah.
Sorry. No, go ahead. I was going to say, I think you raise a number of really good points. One of them is the importance of having the team consistent throughout, so that everyone is caught up on the memory of the project, because thousands and thousands and thousands of decisions get made over time and they stack on top of each other. And yes, there's documentation via email and drawings and stuff like that, but there's a lot of it is just knowing the history and being able to read that history. And so I can really imagine where, if you're a contractor, you come in after, you know, once CDs are done, for you, it's brand new. And there's all of this history that you don't know about. And it would be a huge undertaking to understand that. And it's just hard to make up for that kind of time. Or being an architect, I mean, being an architect and doing construction administration on a project I didn't draw or design would be very similar to what you're doing, actually. If I think about it, it's like, okay, I don't really know what was the intention here, like which path do I go down?
Exactly. And I get it that, you know, lots of conversations are had and you expect for everything to translate. Not everything translates exactly in plans all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of interpretation and sort of more general notes, or it's leading in that direction, but it really takes working on that specific aspect to understand what went into that. And like I said, it's not for us to question why things are, but it helps us if we know why things are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It helps us know how to deliver the vision correctly. And yeah, I would always suggest to clients, you know, really pick who you like and who you want to work with and stick it out, because you will be so much happier with the end result, because it will better capture, you know, all those different areas that you talked about, that you reviewed, that you added, that you changed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing more disappointing than seeing something get missed or get added at the 11th hour that should have been added in the beginning. I mean, especially on some homes, it sticks out. Yeah, I mean, you can tell, oh man, that was an afterthought. And that's just, it's disappointing.
Another thing you brought up, which I thought was really great, is that I've said this before. I feel like a lot of folks they think that someone produces construction drawings, the architect, right? Okay, you have your blueprint. It's like a Lego instruction set. I have the blueprint, the instructions. I hand it off to someone else. They're going to build it, and it's clean. It's a clean break between those two. You don't need the architect to continue. The contractor can just use the client if they have any questions. And to your point, just because of the sheer complexity of building a building, there's going to be so many questions that come up throughout the construction, and we're always trying to emphasize that those questions are not just technical things. Like the contractor can solve, if it's truly just technical, the contractors can solve that on their own. They know what specific materials to choose, how to put them together, but anything that bleeds over into affecting how the home is going to look, well, then it becomes a design question, right? So the design and construction are really tightly paired throughout construction. And that's where it becomes really challenging, I think, for clients when they're on their own, because now they're stuck in the spot where they're having to try and make a decision about two things that they're not, between them and their partner, even on two things that they're not, they don't have practice in. And it can be really difficult if they're in that spot.
And not to mention, it is also a liability issue for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, our job with shop drawings, we're supposed to confirm sizes, but I'm not supposed to confirm the design intent. I'm not supposed to confirm that window is the color that they wanted, the glazing specification. That's the architect's job.
Yeah.
Waterproofing specifications. I can make a suggestion on what I've used and what I trust, but I still have to turn in all the technical data that supports why it's the right product for the application. And that still needs to be signed off. So it behooves all of us to work together as a team and stay as a team. And that's where we're always asking to keep people involved, because then also with permitting and cities and stuff, we know a certain extent about requirements, but we're not involved a lot of times in the planning approvals or design review. So I don't know every aspect that went through or is a requirement for them. And the architects usually do. They're much more aware of, okay, this change has to go back through the process. This needs to be submitted as a revision. So that's just where we're also specialized now, and everybody knows their parts as best they can, and we have to work together and piggyback off of each other to realize the whole project. And what we're building one-offs. We're building a home that's never been built ever before for the first time, and we only get one chance to do it.
Yeah.
So if we were manufacturing something, maybe after the second or third, we'd have it down, we could do it, there'd be no questions, no problems, we could do it faster for less money, everything. We get one chance to build something that's never been built or designed before. To think that everything you could possibly need is going to be in those plans is unrealistic.
Yeah.
Your soils conditions are going to be different. Your structural, depending on location, is going to be different. Everything is unique to that specific project. And there are a lot of aspects that have to integrate and coordinate and meet not only necessities, but desires for clients. And it takes a village.
But that's one of the really challenging parts of doing custom work or one-offs, but also the really exciting thing is that, no one at the very beginning of the project knows what it's going to end up being exactly. There's a rough idea, of course, of like limitations based on zoning, probably what kind of style, what we're going for, and other things like this, that we're doing a house instead of an office. But there's this big kind of unknown at the end. And on the one hand, I suppose it sounds frightening, but on the other, it's extremely exhilarating and exciting in the positive light.
Right.
There's nothing better. I mean, there is no two projects that are the same. You have a different team, you have a different client, you have a different location, you have a different, project, home, remodel, whatever it is, a different style, different products, different needs, etc. I mean, it's the best part about it is that no two are the exact same. Different issues and exciting new products or features, or creative decisions. It's just great how much we get to see. And some projects, they come up with something you've never heard of it before, never seen it before, and so you research. I mean, we've gotten to work with great companies from Spain and Italy and all over the place that we would have gotten the chance to, but something was designed that we didn't know how to do it, and so we found somebody that did. And so that's the best, most exhilarating part of it. Sometimes, you get them and you're scared, a little scared.
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to do this? But, you figure out a way. We always say we're builders. So we will figure out how to build it, no matter what it is. So
I want to go back to something you said early on as to, basically the timing of hiring a contractor. And I feel like a lot of time, maybe clients come to the contractor, they don't even have a design yet. They don't even know what they want, right? And then they want to hire you right away and want to know exactly how much it's going to cost. And then
how long?
Yeah, and how long, right? So, you can go on about, about that a little bit too. And then there's the other extreme that's like, okay, well, let's hire the contractor now that we have all of the design and all of the CDs done. And now let's find out how much it's going to cost and if we can build it this way.
Right.
So I think, what you mentioned as it would be good maybe to hire the contractor and the architect and all the team kind of at the same time early on to be part of the process. I think is a very interesting idea and probably the ideal scenario, it sounds to me, and probably for the client too, right? Because you can really, I'm assuming, kind of figure out, could we do this? Could we build this way? Could we afford this?
Estimating
right?
also,
Estimating.
for sure.
So if a client reaches out to us, and they know they want to do a project, and they're asking us, what's the process? How does this work? Our first step is always, okay, you need an architect. So it's for us understanding scope, scale, timing, style, etc. And then us going through our history of who we've worked with, who's the best fit. And that depends, just like general contractors depend. Is it require a big, full service architecture firm that can really man it and get it through? Is it in San Francisco where you need somebody that's much more familiar with the permitting, planning, approval process there, because that's much more difficult? Or is it a project where you really need somebody smaller that can jump on it and can not reinvent the wheel, Yeah. And so when we do that, again, it really stays in the client's hands. We say, here are who we think would be great fits. They usually interview them and they pick them, and we don't hear anything for a while, which is fine. That usually means they've interviewed, they've picked someone in their starting design process. And so then maybe we hear from them 6 months later. They have sort of a preliminary. They're starting to get into, they have the floor plans, they have some elevations. Their next round is they're going to start getting into details, more of a permit set. And that's usually sometimes when they'll re-engage us. Okay, we have a real project. The client's committed to this sort of layout. Now we're getting going. We can envision when it's going to go for permit, aka when it's going to go to construction. So that can help us for planning purposes, developing a schedule based on when those things go, based on an overall general rough idea of scope. We can also put preliminary historical numbers to it. We can look at it and say, okay, this is this many square feet, it's this style. We just did something like that 5 years ago, add for inflation, you're looking about this budget. And then we can work with the team on confirming sometimes specifications. We're thinking about this window company or this window company, what do you think? Well, their lead time's double the other one. Or we love working with this product. It's so easy to install and waterproof, never had issues. We can help the client, get them samples from real subcontractors that we know we can get those materials. We can start developing sort of that team, the construction team, who's going to be a good fit based on size, availability, And again, going back to right now, our industry is crazy. Sourcing materials is extremely difficult, and securing the team is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And so the further in advance you can do both of those things, the better off you are to keep a schedule. So that's, I would say, a really ideal version. The other one would be the architect reaches out to us, but again, at the same time, hey, we're interviewing contractors. We got selected a year ago for a project, and they had, I think, floor plans, and then they had some renderings, and that's all they had. And they knew we want to pick our contractor now. We want to do it based off of a relationship. We know it's going to be a process, and we just want to work through the design process with the contractor. It's been a dream scenario. I mean, we're going to start construction in October. We were able to, provide confirmed pricing on structural. We're continuing to bid out as we get information. And so it's really being designed in coordination with the cost, what the client wants, who we know that can deliver the project. And so I think it's going to be a really great, project, because we've gotten to be so involved from the start. So I would say as early as you can, pick a contractor, whether we have preliminary drawings, pick a contractor then. It's going to be great to get to know each other and to keep the process more seamless.
This way of doing things makes a whole lot of sense, especially for custom work. I think there's different ranges of homes, let's say specifically, and there's some that are more cookie cutter. And then in those cases, the process can be a little more cleanly divided, or the lines between these phases can be made clearer, and the team can kind of come in and out when needed. But if you're doing something that's very, very specific and very unique and a one-off, then yeah, what you're saying makes total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I speak from our experience of what we do. And like I said, we also do commercial, which is basically, here you go, plans are ready to go, build it as fast as you can.
Yeah.
It's all decided. I don't want to hear from you, just get it done.
Right.
So every project is unique in that aspect of what it really requires. There are some things that, sure, we'll pick up the permit and we'll go build it, no problem. But for what we do, being involved and being part of the team is always great.
Totally. And I want to ask about, hiring a contractor for folks looking for one and what they should look for. But just before that, I was curious, construction drawings, like how important are those for you guys for building from? Because on the one hand, you have, let's say on the extreme where you have just design drawings, like you mentioned, like some architects will do, where they're maybe permit drawings and there's maybe a little more detail, but not really, and they hand it off. And at least for us, the idea of that for a custom home really freaks me out. I don't know how that would ever happen. But so you have really bare bones stuff, which would be called design drawings, versus construction drawings on the other extreme that are super detailed and have a bunch of different details cut through sections and plan details and et cetera for how everything goes together. But how beneficial is it for you, like on site, when you have a set that is much more complete and detailed versus one that is bare bones?
So the more detailed, the better we can bid it, I would say. That's where we can get really drilled down and know where we're going. I would say the more design, the more assumptions we're making about how we're getting there. So there's way more variance for us to either overthink it or underthink it. But for actually building it, no matter what, we're going to ask the question. So it's really up to the client and the team's comfort level with where we start. But depending on the project, knowing where you're going is the best way to start a project, because you can make, assumptions in the beginning. Say you're starting with design drawings and they want us to get started. that's fine. But if you don't know where the whole thing is going, how can you plan for it with a foundation of, do I need conduits? Do I need to upsize these structural members because the window opening here is going to this different model that's larger than anything we've done, and it won't be able to support it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be, for what we do, you don't want to be limited by a decision that you made rashly in the beginning just to get going. You are much better off when you're thinking ahead and projecting what it's going to be, because then it just is planned for better. You don't want to be limited. So we've done both. I would say when it's design drawings to start construction, it takes longer and it costs more. When it's construction drawings, pretty much how we bid it and estimated the time frame to be is pretty close to dead on.
Right.
And so that's the difference. It just makes for, and I think it makes for a better project, because instead of in the beginning, if you have design drawings, you're asking so many questions to get going and it doesn't allow for the proper time for the team to stay ahead of the upcoming questions. And so everything is constantly like almost in the rears.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't feel very fair. We're trying to push. That's our job for the client, to push and get it done. So we're hammering for what we need, but their job for the client is to think ahead and put things in front of them and give them time to decide so they can incorporate it. And so I just don't think it's fair to the team when it's like that. I think the more, and there are a lot of details that have to be included for permit that we don't need, we don't need every footing detail. Like there are certain things that are like, we've been doing this forever. Like, you don't need to detail this. This is something we're going to figure out in the field. Okay, how does this siding interact with this window trim? Some of it gets a little silly, but detailed enough to know the overall intent of where the project is going is always best for everyone. That lets us at least get going and all of us to stay ahead of what's coming.
Do you guys use a lot of 3D models for like the construction portion of the project? Like, do you use the model that the architect and the engineers will work on, or is it still mostly like 2D types of documents?
So primarily it's based off of 2D, but when we're dealing with really unique projects that is very design based, and like one that's very notable to me that we just finished a couple years ago in San Francisco, and we started off with very design drawings, and almost structural was almost so complicated they couldn't plan it out. It had to be modeled out. And so through that entire project, we were constantly using a 3D model to see the intersection of materials, to see what the planes were. It was very modern, lots of glass. You didn't have anywhere to hide anything. And to fully understand what we were trying to get it to look like so we could figure out the best way to build it, we had to. So there are cases where even through construction, they're constantly, the architect's updating it, and we're constantly looking at it to say, okay, we can put this here because we have this plane coming here. I would say in modern construction, it's much more of a necessity because every line is important. And so reading how they want them to interact with each other is everything. The models are great for also estimating, to get a sense of what they're envisioning, because at that time, usually it is preliminary and not everything's down. And sometimes the models are further along than the plans are because the clients can better understand it that way. So the architect's using the models to show the client to get decisions made, and then the plans are following up behind it. So we enjoy, getting them early on, and then depending on the project, yes, we are using them throughout the course.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because obviously all the professionals involved are very used to reading a building in 2D technical drawings, but
Mhm.
still having a series of 3D images is so helpful because it takes a quarter of a second to understand something in a
Yeah.
3D perspective, which you can't use to build off of for obvious reasons, but just as another layer of understanding, so you don't have to use 90% of your brain power to try and understand what you're looking at.
Absolutely. For us to ask questions too,
Hmm.
it's so much more helpful. I mean, instead of having to draw an ISO every time to be like, oh, we're talking about this point, you show it here, but actually it's 6 inches to the right. So this is, and when you can get in a model with each other and say, this plane is not this plane,
Right.
it's
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
here. Um, those are things that, it helps everybody always. And so there are certain projects where, thank God they kept the models up and we were able to use it through the whole thing because we never would have all been able to see it from the same way.
Mhm.
Especially, like I said, where the structural was so complicated, they had to do all 3D modeling for the structural design just to incorporate all the different angles and torques and et cetera. And so for us to understand that, we had to be in 3D and the architect as well to incorporate
Yeah.
that. So it's a great tool. I love that they've started doing it, especially when, you have the whole house and then you can enter into the different rooms and you can look at all the different angles. I mean, it's really amazing what they're doing, and it's helpful for everyone, I think.
You had mentioned a couple of times that there's a big difference between doing more traditional work style. We're talking about aesthetics versus modern, and I think that gets to the question of what to look for when you're hiring a contractor, and if you have a certain type of project. Are there key qualifiers when selecting a contractor? I mean, I would imagine. So, for a specific example, is that if I'm wanting to do a modern home, how important is it that I find a contractor who has done that type of work before and knows how to do it, and compared to traditional work styles?
Yes. So I would say the importance is tenfold in a modern home because, like I've said, you can't hide anything. If you miss one thing, it reads. You can walk in a modern home that was not done well, and you can see like I talk about reveals being correct. Or what you see a lot right now is doors that are flush to the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk about the framing, bring true and plumb, you're doing level 5 drywall. That is the full wall. You don't have any trim to hide anything. There's no base. It's just, you read everything. Yeah. And so also a lot of times with modern, you're dealing with very small, either attic or joist space
Mm-hmm.
or thin wall sections. And so your room to run any of the equipment necessary for a home is minuscule. And going back to the Title 24 that we talked about, insulation requirements, it's not like you could go back in there and just pull out the old insulation and rerun something. It's spray foamed insulation. Once it's in, it's in, and so those are things that I would say with modern, it's just so important to look at a contractor's work, to speak to past clients, and to talk with them about their theory on how they handle those projects. Because modern is definitely think of everything at the beginning and work on it the whole way through. It's not, oh, we'll get to the lighting design later. Well, no, you don't have any room, especially, your layout. They want it on a modern. Symmetry or spacing or alignment is all very important. I think modern, if you can appreciate it, there are a million minute details that are not just clear, to the naked eye, but if you look at them, you can appreciate how much work went into achieving some of those things.
Yeah.
With traditional homes, it's an appreciation for what the traditional aspects represent.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you usually have more ways of potentially hiding maybe a mistake, but to do a really, truly, beautiful, correct appreciative job. It's knowing where crown should be, and how a three-piece crown works, and the profiles, and how that relates to a casing. And so there's many more finish aspects that tie to each other, I would say, with traditional, and an appreciation for wood and carpentry to deliver that, even if it's paint grade. If your cuts and your joints aren't right, you can putty and paint it, but it's not going to read the way it should, and an understanding of what sort of wood you can use in what locations, and different cuts of wood. And there's just, there's a craftsman level appreciation and quality and design to traditional that is really spectacular and requires as much detail and focus when really done correctly. But I would say traditional is more in the finish than it is for the general process. You can you build a home, and when it gets to the end, to the finish, to completing it, is where you really have to pay attention and pay homage.
Right. Whereas for modern work, it really requires that planning at the very beginning to have that payoff happen at the end. Yeah,
because for modern, once it's sheetrocked and painted,
that's it.
That's it. You don't need any other options. You can put some stone instead, or but
you can put a crown molding, but it won't look right.
No, exactly. Yeah, you can't hide anything. Everything's in the forefront. Once that flooring goes in, those walls go in, you get what you get.
So what would you say that a client should look for in a contractor when they're speaking to different ones? Are there key traits to you, expertise, obviously experience with certain types of work, anything else?
So like I said from the beginning, though, is a relationship. Someone that you can work with. You want somebody that's fair and reasonable, that's, ask for references, client references, talk to, that's one of our biggest things. We have hundreds of clients, and there's maybe only 2 that we don't talk to anymore. Every other one is a friend. Still, I could list any one of them as a reference, and they'd be happy to talk to you. I could show you almost any home we've ever built because our clients are happy to. So that's, a pride point for us. And I think that is comforting to new clients, to know that we have a history, a longstanding good history with clients. The other thing is just how they run their business. There are tons of different styles. For us, we do have overhead. We manage our projects. We have full-time supervision. When we fill up our guys, we don't take on any more work. That's the only way we know how to do work. There are other guys who can run 3 projects at a time, and that may be fine for them and for certain clients. But my comment to clients is always, if you're looking for someone it's managed, it's on site, we're always on it, you got the same team throughout, that is important for a lot of them. It's very much a peace of mind coverage. So I think that's important. I think just history and standing, and for the most part, when we interview on projects, we're interviewing with like contractors. So we know our pricing is going to be pretty close to the same. Our schedule is going to be pretty close to the same. And we know they can deliver good projects. So it's really just a personality contest then. I mean, there's nobody that's doing something completely outside the box that no one's ever heard of that is amazing. We're all contractors, and we're all in the same sort of group. The only time you're gonna have issues is if it's not like contractors. If it's a pickup guy and us, we're out. We're never gonna be competitive, and we're never gonna be able to deliver the same price that guy's delivering. So that's my big suggestion to clients is, do research, talk to people, talk to your architect, your design team, and just talk to the people, and get a sense, trust sort of, your feeling on who you like or who you want to work with, because if you're in the right network of people, they're all going to be pretty similar and you can be trusted, and it's just who you want to work with.
Well, I think those are fantastic points, and the relationship one is, I want to say again, is
it's often one I feel like that's overlooked.
It's overlooked, right? Because
clients.
You think about expertise, you think about budget, how much a contractor costs, but assuming that all the contractors you're looking at are qualified in the sense that you're talking about, they're within a certain tier or with a certain range, and you would be okay with going any of them. It does come down to how well what the rapport you have with that individual, and that's also really important, because there are always going to be new problems that come up on any project. Right. So there's going to be this time where it's not just about, oh, I've solved this in the past. It's about, we have this new thing. I've not come across this before, this exact situation, and we've got to solve for it. And that happens really, really often, almost regardless of how much experience a person has, if we're talking about custom work. And so therefore, it's really about how can the team work together to solve new things? I think that's like the big question, because if you have an architect who has 50 years of experience, but when they get to a new problem, they refuse to solve it, or a contractor who has 50 years of experience, when they get to a new condition, they say, well, I just don't do that. We're not going to deal with it. That's the part that causes problems in custom work, especially.
Well, yeah, the whole point is that we are a whole team.
Yeah.
And there are certain ways sometimes that it can be structured or it can be contracted where it could try to put us at odds, but really that doesn't get you to the end goal that you want. Yeah. I mean, if you're really looking to have this design built the best and delivered to you, as what you want, then you want everybody collectively working together, trying to get it there. Putting us at odds or taking away the architect and putting us on tasked to try and figure it out, it's just, it doesn't make for a great conducive working relationship. I mean, that even comes down to how we try and contract with clients. We don't want to be at odds, forbid the worst happening, could happen. We have this that covers us to deal with in that situation. But for the most part, we want to start from a place of, we're working with the same goal in mind. We're trying to get you the best home for the best price in the best amount of time possible. That's most beneficial for us as it is for them. The quicker I can get it done and do it correctly and deliver it over them, the quicker I can go to another thing.
Yeah.
So, and having a team that wants to get there, that's always our point, is we're not, an RFI is not a point the finger. You didn't figure this out. You didn't do your job. Give us more money.
Yeah.
An RFI should be, hey, we don't think this works based on these conditions. Here's a potential solution. Do you like that, or do you have a different solution? We're open, to ideas. Let's make it work.
Yeah.
I can never imagine. I know there are contractors and there are certain types of construction that is like that. That is, bottom dollar, change order to death, and maybe that works, but I don't want to spend 3 years of my life like that. I don't want to be fighting with everyone for 3 years. I don't want to, we are lucky enough to have a sub base that's been around as long as we have for the most part. We've added to it. There's new ones, but they work for us and, we work for them. It's been a mutually beneficial relationship. It's why we worked with a lot of the same architects for 35 years and why we still talk to our clients after 35 years, because we all just want it to be an enjoyable time. It's what we've chosen to do for our career and our life. And it should be the excitement, like we talked about, of this one-off, new, never seen it before, unique opportunity to figure something out together and see it at the end. And there's nothing that is more rewarding than getting through it and having figured it out and a client being ecstatic. And, it's the best feeling. And getting there collectively and working together, the process, you have to enjoy the process too. And that's the way to enjoy the process, not being combative or pitted against each other.
I think that last part's really important, and it's kind of about mindset, right? And it's all about having the right pairing of people. So, and before we were talking about the differences between modern and traditional types of work, but I think it's also a delineation can also be made between custom residential versus not as custom residential. And it is about a mindset. I think folks who do custom residential and enjoy doing it like yourselves, there's a certain mindset you bring to every project. Like you are eager and excited to do something new. It's not always fun to solve new problems because it can be very stressful. But, that's part of what you do. That's part of what you're aiming to create. And I think, we've seen a lot of times that the process becomes difficult when that pairing is not right. So even more specifically, when there's a builder who doesn't do custom work, that's not their business model. That's maybe even not their interest. And they get hired to do a custom job. And then now we're in a situation where, they're being thrown in to solve a bunch of new things and they don't want to because it's not advantageous for them. And I would understand. I understand from their perspective. But that's where... So, if you're doing something that's going to be very unique, finding a team who is wanting to do that, you have to. Otherwise, it's going to be, like you said, 3 years of headache.
Well, absolutely. And that's where I said, if a client comes to us asking us, how to get going, understanding what they're going for makes all the difference in the world of what architects we're going to refer them to. There are certain architects that we work with that we love, but they're not going to be a good fit for that. And same goes with an architect suggesting contractors. There are, we've had past clients that come to us and say, we want this, and we'll be honest, we're not the best fit for that. We'll do it if you absolutely want us to, because you're a past client, but you could go to these 3 people and they would do just as good a job with this, because they're just better suited for it. Yeah. So yes, you need to make sure with your projects that you're in the right realm of people. Yeah. Like I said, if we get interviewed and then they tell us they're interviewing a pickup truck person, we're out. You're not in the same ballpark of people.
You're 3 times more expensive. What are you guys doing?
And there is enough construction work for all of us. So I don't need to try and compete with that person, and he doesn't need to try and take some other project. There definitely is enough work for us all. And that's why I say, when you got 3 of us that are similar, you're fine. Pick who you're, we're all going to be okay. We're all going to keep going and it's going to be great. And so, yes, making sure that your team fits sort of the realm, idea, scope of what you're trying to do is the best fit for getting it done correctly. Because like you talked about, if you pick up somebody, a GC that's not a custom person, odds are they're going to make decisions based off of what they are used to, what they like using, what they can get their hands on. And it doesn't really matter if it fits what you want, and that works for them, and my husband is in construction as well, and he works for a developer. So he builds lots of the same homes over and over again as fast as possible. I couldn't imagine doing it myself. He's very good at it and he loves it. He couldn't imagine being stuck on a project for 3 years like we are. So it's to each their own, There are good fits for everybody and there's enough of it to go around. So
great.
There is licensed architects. Well, there is architects who technically are licensed, otherwise they cannot be architect. And then there is architectural designers, meaning you're not licensed. Is there such a thing for contractors? Like, do contractors have to be licensed contractors or not? What's the difference?
Yes, you have to be a licensed contractor. Now, I'm sure there are non-licensed people who do work without permits.
Mm-hmm.
If it's permitted, you have to be a licensed contractor. Certain permits only require certain types of licenses. So pool contractors can do their own projects,
Right.
you know, and they have a pool contractor's license. We have a Class B General Contractor's license. So for us, the scope of a project has to involve at least 3 trades for us to be the permit holder. If it were, say it was an installation of a generator, and you knew you had to do sheetrock work, and you had the electrical, obviously, maybe you had to do a little bit of concrete work for the pad. That would still be considered, that's 3 trades, but the scope of the permit is not 3 trades. The scope of the permit is the generator. So that's an electrician pulling that permit. I can't pull that permit. But if it's a remodel where you know, okay, you're gonna need a plumber, you're gonna need an electrician, you're gonna need an HVAC, then I have to pull the permit. Not one of my subs could pull that permit.
Right.
For their individual scopes of work.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, state of California licensing for general contractors, very important. You know, all of our subs have to be licensed in their specific fields. It's a must. I can't imagine working without one. You know, like I said, I know there are some, but I can't imagine that.
Well, and it comes back to liability, right? You guys are all responsible for whichever trade and work you're doing because of safety reasons and legislation and all this good stuff. So I think, yeah, it's super important to work with licensed professionals.
Yes, and through the license board, I mean, you can look up anybody's standings. It'll show if they have any history of lapsed licenses or cases against them or failure to pay wages.
Yeah.
You know, you can look up all that history. It also guarantees workers' compensation insurance, which not all companies need. If it's an owner, operator, solo, you know, company, they don't have to have it for themselves. If you have employees, you have to have it. It shows that it's current. It shows who the carrier is. It also shows bonding, how high they're bonded. So there are a lot of great aspects of it. Once you get it, it's, you know, it's very, you pay for it to keep it maintained. It's not that difficult,
right.
You know.
So, of course, one of the big topics when you're selecting someone is how much they cost. So you don't have to necessarily reveal like what you guys would charge, but you know, generally for the kind of work that you guys do, how are contractors' fees typically? How do they typically work for different projects? Is it always percentage of? Is it always percentage of construction?
I would say the most common contract version is cost plus a fee, which is a percentage fee based on the cost of the work. That is the most standard across, you know, all projects. The only other version of that same style contract would be the AIA contract, cost plus a fee is the other standard version. Sometimes you get asked about a fixed fee or a guaranteed maximum price. It's very rare, and it's usually not the best fit for what we do. And that being, like I said, you don't want to start off pitted against each other. If it's a guaranteed maximum price, then I am beholden to that. So if I have any opportunity to get something for less money so that I can make sure that I make that, I am incentivized to do so.
Yeah.
If it's a fixed fee, then again, my job is to get out of there as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
No matter what, because I get that fee, which is a better payoff the shorter amount of time I'm there. When you do cost plus a percentage fee, yes, there is chance of cost going up, increasing my fee, but there also is the chance of cost coming down, which incentivizes the client. The way we personally back into what our fee is on a job is we look at what our time of involvement is. Because really that's all we're looking to make. We have a certain percentage of profit and overhead that as an overall company across all our projects, we're trying to make monthly basically.
Mm-hmm.
And if you split that up, evenly, we get to like a set, okay, per project per month, we want to make about this much money. That's going to cover our overhead and we're going to make some money. So if a project's 18 months, it's 18 times that fee. Then we back into that, okay, this job is $3 million at 10%, that equals our fee or whatever. We can check and balance our fee percentage based on that. So sometimes you do a remodel, we're going to be there for 3 months. It's not that much money. Your percentage is very high. You're 18% or 20% because it's not very much money of a job, but you're still there and out of the game for 3 months. Sometimes you're on a big project, big budget, and it's going to be 3 years. Your fee could be as low as 5% because, over the course of time, it's so much money of a job. It doesn't, impact you at all. It's like a steady. Yeah. And then we've also contracted on a monthly fee as well. As long as we pay our monthly, we don't care how much it costs, we'll be here. But the percentage fee is the most common. I don't really know anybody that has a different version as their go-to standard.
There's no hourly fee?
Hourly fee?
No. So I'm sure all GCs do this, you have your supervision costs. So that is the cost of our supervisor on the job. And then you have project management costs as well. That's outside of your profit and overhead fee. And what those rates are, how much, our supervision is for the full course of the job. Like I said, we manage it from start to finish. Project management, like I said, we split the amount of projects amongst us. So I oversee 3 projects. So my cost imprint isn't fully on one job. It's like a third of my involvement is on that job. So that's how we get covered there. Insurance is always a percentage as well. And that's a pretty standard set percentage from all GCs based off of the amount of work they handle and how much their insurance costs. So
you had mentioned that the percentage fee varies from project to project, obviously, and as low as I guess 5 to. But I was wondering, like, how high does that get? Is there an average? Is it more expensive for modern work versus traditional work?
Not for us. It doesn't. For us, it doesn't make a difference, and I don't think it really does for anybody else, because, like I said, for the most part, everyone knows how much money they're looking to make monthly or yearly, and that doesn't fluctuate based on the type of the work. It'll fluctuate based on your amount of involvement, and sometimes on the costs. If it's, say it's, a $20 million job that's going to require 5 people off of your staff. So basically it's taking down two projects out of your normal amount of workload. Well, you have to make enough profit and overhead to cover 2 projects because you're not getting a second one to cover it.
Sure.
And on that project, the client wants it fully staffed, doesn't care, So yeah, your percentage might be a little bit higher on that, but it doesn't matter whether it's modern or traditional. The only thing that you'll see is if the cost of what's in it is extremely high, say really expensive materials. And so for the amount of time of the job, the cost of the project is not really relative.
Right.
It's really expensive, but you're going to go through it in 12 months. It's not that long of a project. It's just really expensive stuff. Your percentage is going to be lower because I don't care whether your tile costs $100 a square foot or $20 a square foot. I mean, if I can get it and I can install it the same way, what difference does it make to me?
Yeah.
Right.
So those are the things. It's so hard because everyone always asks, and it really depends on, for us, how long are we there? And we can get pretty good estimates of how long we're going to be there pretty quickly. For the most part, it's hard for us to do anything in less than 18 months anymore. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's why I say 2 or 3 year projects. Okay, we need to make, you know, about this much money, whether that ends up being 5% of the total cost or 12 or 13. But I would say for the size of projects that we get and the amount of time the projects we get, we're usually somewhere between 9 and 13.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's helpful. Some people, is it 30%? Is it 2%? Is it 50?
No.
Yeah, sure. If you want to pay 50%, I'm sure you have no problem with that.
So I would say the most we ever charged was like 20%. And that was for service work for a past client, you know, because it's, you know, it's like, hey, a door handle got stuck. Okay, well, I got to go over there for an hour and adjust it. You know, you don't make any money on it. So
going toward a little bit like the training of a contractor, you have a construction management degree. Is that something that's typical for a GC?
I'm guessing more and more, and as we continue to go through time, yes. I'm the only person in my company that has a bachelor's in construction management. My father, like I said, just came from work. You know, He worked in construction. Most of my guys, the same thing. They started as tradesmen, carpenters, framers, whatever. But I do think that more and more it's going in the way of, you know, bachelor's degrees for 2 reasons. One, there's less tradespeople anymore. That is going to be a big concern over the coming years of labor shortage and tradespeople. So that's a concern. And 2, for anyone wanting to get experience and work in other companies, not necessarily in the field moving up, they have to have a bachelor's. I mean, any commercial company, any, you know, large construction company that I ever looked at before I came here, I mean, my bachelor's was a requirement. So I would say currently it's not necessarily the standard, but it will be.
Okay.
Interesting.
So a lot of the training actually happens with experience, like on site as you go, or like what do you guys learn in school?
Yeah, so just really quick, to get a contractor's license, you have to have proven years experience in construction.
Gotcha.
To even get to take the test.
Yeah.
So when I first got out of college, I couldn't take the contractor's test. Now I could. I have enough years experience and proof that I, have done it. So that's the interesting aspect about that. For me, college, I grew up around the company, so I had a fair amount of, knowledge and experience for how we do it. The benefits of specifically Cal Poly construction management is that they make you take so many support courses in the neighboring fields. So getting to do, like I learned to do AutoCAD and the draft. It's something I've basically never used since. We do drafting a little bit when we're trying to understand a detail or how we think we're going to build something. But at least I have an understanding of what it takes or how things are being done. The engineering aspect, I can better understand how structural got to the decision they got to on how something was engineered, or better propose an alternate solution that's a better fit for us, but still meets their needs.
Yeah.
We also took things like surveying. Again, it's something I haven't done since, but my guys in the field survey all the time. It's a great tool to have. So depending on what path you take out of college, it's amazing. But the best things that I personally took there, we took contracts. We also had a lot of English writing classes, like how to be efficient and professional with your writing, which I find I use constantly.
Yeah. And a lot of people could use that that course.
Yes. How you word things is so important in what we do.
Yeah.
And so that was amazing. We took safety. We had to get our OSHA certifications. We took our senior project was, we had to take a piece of land and we were supposed to develop a portion of it. We were supposed to come up with a proposed, this is what we would put on this land. This is how much it would cost. This is how much it would take. And we had to present it like we were bidding to develop this piece of property. And I did the estimating on it. It was a really great, and we were just using historical, okay, we're picking up pieces from this property and this development project and, these historical costs and stuff like that. But it was a great opportunity to look at what it takes to, present on a job of trying to realize what's involved and how to present. So, I loved college. I loved all my major and support courses. I think it's really well-rounded. And I think it gives a lot of people an opportunity to not necessarily just do what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many routes and different opportunities when you come out of Cal Poly. I know lots of construction management people that ended up in architecture firms or civil and, engineering. Or just in contracts or other forms of businesses where, again, how you write, how you track things, how you communicate is so important, just like in construction. So that's the benefit there. The one thing that I don't have, which is my disadvantage here that everybody else has, is experience in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never framed anything before. I have poured a fair amount of concrete in my day. So I have that benefit, but every project we go through, I learn more and more about how things are done in the field, about sequencing, about understanding, the forethought and, okay, if we're trying to get to that, this is how we did this. So that is something that's great that I get to continue to learn. I would say that was my one big disadvantage of not having experience in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's where my dad is so involved overseeing, because he comes from that aspect.
Right.
I'm better suited in the office. I'm more aware of processes and protocols than he is,
Mm-hmm.
because he's more field-based. So it's a good balance for us. And I would say there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But either way, depending on where you end up and what career path you take, you can pick up, on items that you didn't have.
Yeah, and there's this philosophy that learning, continues on after college, and that obviously applies to every degree and every profession. But especially one in the building industry like yours, where it's highly collaborative, right? You're relying on the expertise of a bunch of specialists of different trades to synthesize and put all that stuff together to create a single thing. And also the industry is always advancing and changing. I mean, the number of products that exist now for specific building components has got to be, I don't know what, like 20 times greater than what was around even like 25 years ago. It's I mean, a lot of it's really cool stuff if you want to geek out, but that does mean that there's all these different avenues. And so I would imagine that I guess the question sort of is like, how does one gain expertise in your field? And certainly a lot of that expertise just has to happen after graduation, once you're practicing, and you have to keep looking and be thirsty for new stuff. Otherwise, I would imagine you fall behind.
Yeah, I think just interest in it, really, and desire. So growing up, I always worked for the company in summers. That was always great for me. I did miscellaneous things primarily in the office. I did get to work in the field some, which is why I poured some concrete and stuff, and sort of tailed some of my supers, see what their day-to-day was, help them, on sites and stuff. So that was good experience to understand that. I did intern one summer as well for a big commercial company, which was an awesome opportunity to do something I'd never done before. I had no real knowledge of. It was also a huge company that had a lot of protocols. They had their own software for construction management. They had on site a team of a super, assistant super, PM, 2 PEs. I was the intern PE, and they had an administrative assistant, all on one job site.
Oh my goodness.
So the structure and the protocol, I mean, such an opportunity to learn how a major company on a major project tracks and stays ahead and does things. And what you see is it's a lot of the same stuff. It's just on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
I mean, working with the PM to analyze subcontractor bids in a matrix, just like we do everywhere else, comparing apples to apples. So it was a great opportunity to see some things that I'd never seen before, some different ways to handle things, but also reassurance of that some of the same base, things that we learn on how to do what we do translates all types of construction. And then leaving school, I wanted to get more experience like that. So I went and I did multifamily housing or mixed use, condos over storefronts and restaurants. So again, a totally different type of construction, totally different type of company, just different experience, not only to see how other people did it, but also to know what I really liked building, what I was interested in, how different companies manage it, how, processes, how many people they have. I mean, those are things. I did have a place where I always sort of looked at it is that I would come back and I would run this company, and we're a small family company. And so we have things that are unique to us that nobody else has, but there are always things that I know that we can improve or that might be really good fits for us to bring in and utilize here. And so I did sort of have that interest in looking at things through that lens that might be different for other people.
Yeah.
But the amount of experience and options out there are endless, and just, getting your feet wet in with companies. When I went to college, they said we had basically two routes. They said you can be a PM or you can be an estimator when you leave here. And I was like, oh, okay. And everybody wanted to be PMs. Nobody wanted to be an estimator. Pushing estimator because they said, oh, you're gonna make more money. There's more job opportunity. There's more security. There's more growth. And I guarantee that's all true because everybody wanted to be PMs. But I think there are way more options than just that. But I did choose to pursue that, project engineer, project manager route. And I did that through multiple different companies, different types of construction. And it definitely benefited me for where I am now and what I'm doing now. But I know a couple of people I graduated with, one went to a plumbing contractor, was with the superintendent route, started as an assistant superintendent for a major plumbing company that did giant commercial projects. He's now like a PM for them, but started in the field route. So there are lots of options. And I would say for us, having experience in both the field and the office is beneficial, but not all companies are like that. And not all positions require that.
Yeah, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I totally agree with the sentiment that having experience in a bunch of different things, even if it's for a short period of time, can be very beneficial for the type of work that you guys are doing. And it's not like you're drawing on that experience all the time, or that you know how to do those different tasks certainly not as well as the experts, but it's having that, that kind of cloud of information that supports and guides your thinking, even if it's in an indirect way, can be super beneficial. Just for lubricating conversations with those experts, or just for finding a new path, a new way of doing things that's slightly better than if you were, let's say, if your experience was always pigeonholed to one thing and you never got to see step a bit outside of that and see that there's alternate ways of doing stuff that, may or may not be applicable, but it's still helpful information.
Yeah, well, I think Cal Poly did such a good job of exposing us to so many different things. I hope you guys have that same experience too. But it really did inspire, I love what I do, but I love architecture and construction in general. I mean, I love an opportunity to go see a design showcase. I love an opportunity to do, a historical home tour. I love an opportunity to go see a public, construction site. I mean, I've been the Richmond Bridge when it was under construction, I got to go on a tour of. I mean, I geek out on that kind of stuff. And I don't have any plan to build any bridges, but I mean, I learned the intricacies of how they timed concrete drying and shrinkage so that that could connect. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever need to pull that knowledge, but it could come in handy, and it's super interesting, and it illuminates your mind to like the possibilities.
Yeah.
I think it definitely makes it easier to understand, you know, that maybe limitations aren't what you think limitations are. And also, we got to be passionate about what we're doing. Like, it's our career. We're going to spend our whole lives doing this. You might as well try, you know, as many things as you can to make sure you're doing what you really are passionate about. And you may think it's single family homes, and you may find out that it is commercial TIs. I don't know, you know, to each their own.
Yeah.
But it's not just like with architects and design. Some have very specific styles, but I think what I hear more and more is that it's more about what is the right fit for the space or for the people, and doing that right and making that project its own thing and unique and exciting and interesting. And I just think that's what we're all after, is the right fit and what is exciting for that individual project or piece.
Oh, that's really well said. I totally agree. And I think also this kind of highlights, I think one of the big similarities between a general contractor and an architect is that in a certain sense, they're both generalists. There's different philosophies on this. Some people might disagree or whatever. But I think they're both generalists. Like, an architect has a good sense of a lot of different things and are interested in a lot of different things. I mean, the bridge example you gave, it sounds really fascinating. There's a lot of stuff to be enthused about. And even more specifically, like, I've always felt for our profession, we've had the fortunate opportunity to work on a variety of different projects at different scales and types and whatnot. And it tends to be, and right now we're focusing on, you know, high-end single-family residential. But we do find that all of that prior experience doing towers, doing interior stuff, doing restaurants or whatever else, it all informs the kind of decision making. And at the very least, like you said, it makes us realize, and we know that when we get to a new situation, and we do perceive every project as a new situation, that there's probably a realm of possibilities that we're not quite seeing it. And we know that they're there. We just don't see it because of all the stuff we've seen before. That's radically different. And so there's a kind of, I don't know, that kind of background synergy that can happen when you have this varied experience. But I think the architect and the contractor as being generalists is an interesting parallel between the two professions.
Yeah, I think you said it great, and I completely agree with you. I mean, I think we're all products of where we came from, of our experiences, of our interests, of everything. You know, it's a culmination of all these different things that makes us, and every continuing project and interaction adds to that as well. It continues to grow us and educate us. And like I said, you never know when you're going to pull something from, you know, Cal Poly 17 years ago. I remember I saw this, or, you know, just on the last project, we had something.
Yeah.
And talking about like our team members, my dad being a boat builder, I can't believe how, you know, several times over the years being here, that he's brought something up from those days. Oh, well, one time I built it this way so we could do this, you know, with the wood. I mean, it's just amazing how all those experiences and things correlate. And I see it with designers and architects all the time, that they're into a certain artist and a certain type of artist work. Well, I know this artist did this out of class, so maybe we could do this out of class, you know? And so all those things just educate us and add to it. And it gives us more options to solving unique problems with unique solutions.
Yeah. And there's a big difference between doing that kind of stuff versus doing work that is highly repetitive. And there's, I guess you said, there's room for everybody to do different things. But I think that that's a really critical thing to understand if you're forming the right team. Again, going back to that stuff. One question we should ask more about working with clients for you guys. So is it most often that the clients contract directly with you, or is there ever a situation where the client, I guess, is contracting with you but through the architect, so they're not doing it directly with you?
So legally, we have to contract with the client.
Mm-hmm.
The architect may be the conduit, and if it's an AIA contract, the architect has to be involved and has to be included in the AIA contract.
Right.
So then we're sort of all lumped in together.
Yeah. But
legally, we have to be contracted to the client, and also really legally, the architect, the whole team needs to be contracted through the client. It is a conflict of interest if the architect were to hire us, or if we were to hire the architect, etc.
Mm-hmm.
We're all supposed to really stay separate and have the client as sort of the one meeting point. That makes it so that the architect is doing their job as they're legally required to do and as code requires them to do, and that we're delivering that project off of our requirements, meeting, what they've put in place,
right,
and not getting them to revise it for us, or us, changing something to help them, etc. So that would be my, biggest comment on that is.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah.
Totally.
Do you have any thoughts on design build? Because I feel like maybe it's more of a trend these days than it was a few years back, right? Where there is a lot of contractors that, transform to design build offices and architecture office that start incorporating contracting and therefore end up being a design build. Mm-hmm. Is there an advantage for the client or a disadvantage for the client going this route versus the more traditional route, let's say?
My guess would be that the advantage for some people would be, yes, it sort of cuts out another level of communication.
Right.
So if it's all in-house, it's pretty easy and probably pretty quick to make decisions and adjustments to keep it moving. My question would be checks and balances, like we just talked about.
Yeah.
Is who's holding who accountable and who's protecting, who from what aspects.
Yeah.
And it would mostly just be like a liability question to me. For us, I don't want to do anything with design. I like that division and that line. And I like the change. I like the working with the different design professionals in the team. So that's what's a best fit for us. I have seen several contractors that we've competed against take design in-house, and they're doing well and it's working for them. I guess time will tell if that continues to work. But most of the time what I've seen with those cases is very rarely in what we do have I seen design build from the start with the contractor. What I've seen is an architect started, and then when the client wanted to get rid of the architect, like we talked about, then it went to the contractor for through construction.
I see.
So I don't think it's as prevalent in what we do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe on smaller scale, but I don't, I guess each their own again.
Yeah. I think you brought up a good point, which is that there's a checks and balances system that happens within the traditional route of architect and contractor having separate contracts, but that are tied together, with the client. Which actually, now that I say it, sounds a bit confusing maybe for folks, but there's a checks and balances, but everyone has to get along. So sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. But anyway, so when you do a design build and you're a client, the danger. What I would say is that you have to find a design build office that you're like 110% confident in for everything. Because we've seen cases where a client will go with design build for the obvious reasons of usually there's a cost savings involved and whatever else. It feels simpler from the client's perspective, but they they're not so sure about their design, qualifications or the construction ones or whatever. And for me, it's like, if you're at all hesitant about any of those things, then that's not the right way to go. You need those two people conversing with each other to make sure things are correct.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think in keeping the client engaged in it, I could
Yes.
imagine a case with design build where my guys in the field have a question and it's, oh, well, this is perfect. I'll just call the office and get a solution.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't go through the normal, like I said, we're conduits of information. It's our job to make sure that it passes through all the filters it's supposed to, that it's clear, that it's concise, and then it gets back to, where it started. And so by having your individual team, you have that path, you have that route, you have the proper checks and balances, and no matter what, through that many people, the client has to confirm and be engaged. And so there is a time impact. It takes a little bit longer, but I think it ensures that it meets all of the needs better, I think. But I haven't done design build, so I can't speak to that personally.
What would you say is the greatest challenge you find in your profession in constructing a project?
It is the balance of all the requirements. I mean, there are times where it does feel impossible to meet all the needs at one time of what the client wants, what we can actually get, how it can be incorporated. Does it meet code? Can I get a supply, installer? It's those moments where it just feels like, I don't know if we can build it. And you always get through it, and it's such a rewarding victory when you do. But it's just the many, many levels and different directions in which requirements are coming from. Your inspector comes out and wants one thing, but it doesn't meet what the soils engineer is stating should be the case. And there are lots of moments of that of, okay, well, how do you meet every aspect of this one condition or this project? And how do you get through that cycle of, does it cost the right amount? Can we get it? Can we install it? Does it meet code? Does the client like it? I mean, there are a lot of moments like that just feel overwhelming and like you're not going to get through it. And so I would say that's the most frustrating. And usually in those moments, the communicating and decision-making and staying calm, it's really, there shouldn't be emotion in it for us, but we do, it is important. It is our job. It is our career. And we do take it personally, but it's really personal for the client.
Mm-hmm.
It's their home. And so you have to be professional, and you have to set expectations, and you have to be clear about what you need. But at the same point, you can't make anybody switch their decision, or, you have to be really a team member and supportive and on board for that. If you are explicit about what it takes, what it costs, what the time impact is, and when you need your decision by, then that's all you can do. Yeah. And after that, you have to just take it as it comes.
That's great. I think that's a great point to end it on. I love that you said that you need to be calm throughout the process, because, the one thing is that the design and construction process it's a marathon. You got to stay calm, cool, collected throughout, all the way until the very, very end. And it takes a certain type of personality to be willing to undertake those types of work.
Yeah. Well, like we said, it's the best part is you get a unique, great team to work with, but it is a lot of individuals with different backgrounds and different life stories over a number of years, dealing with different things and different driving factors. And so it is, it's a lot of work to keep those relationships and maintain them and work through them. And just like any relationships are. So,
do you have a secret to kind of like stay cool? And do you have like a squishy ball by the desk or a punching bag handy?
A punching bag.
So luckily, I am a very passive person. I think that's why I'm the only person in our office who does the permitting for us.
Oh, yeah.
Can handle the departments and the requirements. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's having like, good people around you, being able to vent. I'm lucky, like I said, my husband's in construction as well. He knows it. So it is great to be able to share stories, and sometimes people need to vent. You got to take it sometimes from clients and from architects, and sometimes you have to vent, and it's okay. And we're all adults and professionals, and we're going to keep it going. So I guess if you want to call me, we can share it.
Thank you guys for listening to this recording. If you enjoyed this episode and you like what we're doing, then please support our show by leaving a review in the Apple Podcast app. That is a great way to support us. Thanks to Sam for joining us for this conversation. I think it was great. Had a good time.
Yeah, she was really fun to talk to, and a lot of good tips. We are also on all of the social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have a hotline where you can send a text message or leave a voicemail. The number is 213-222-6950.
And why would someone text that hotline?
Or maybe you listen to the episode and you have a few questions, or you loved it and you just want to tell us how much you love it. Or maybe you have a fun anecdote or story or some tips you want to share with other listeners that might be interested.
Right. That's like 5 reasons right there.
Or you really want to see someone as one of our guests in the show being interviewed, and you just want to pitch the idea to us. You could do that.
You can also find us at secondstudiopod.com, and our email is hello@secondstudiopod.com. Thanks again for listening. It means a lot to us. We have some great people lined up. Really, we do appreciate all of you guys, because if it wasn't for you, then we wouldn't be at the level that we're at today. We'd probably still be doing this.
We'd still be doing it, but
it would just be the two of us.
Now we have an even bigger reason to do it, so that's pretty cool.
All right, thanks again, and we'll talk to you again next week or sooner. Bye.
Bye-bye.